Brett Kavanaugh deserves a little bit more of our time. We were talking in the last hour. You and I were talking about his nomination. Ian Millhiser and I spoke about him as a justice and other aspects of the nomination. But I want to go back to something you said in the last hour, which was that Mitch McConnell did not want Brett Kavanaugh from the perspective, and let's face it, like, there's a difference between a sort of a theocratic corporate shill or a corporate theocratic shill, right? I mean,
exactly.
In terms of what was in the offering here, but from a confirmation standpoint, Mitch McConnell was reluctant to have a Kavanaugh because there are so many documents on this guy. And here's the thing: there's a couple elements to this. It seems to me, and I want to get your take on this. The first order of business is to make sure that Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Donnelly, McCaskill maybe, although I don't think that's as much of an issue, and maybe one or two others, do not bolt.
Right.
And particularly prematurely, and Jones is another one. Jones has said, like, he's keeping an open mind, which is good. As long as they, like, you keep an open mind, you can say that. But you do not want any of them to come out and say that they're going to vote for Kavanaugh, because then Susan Collins and Murkowski, any Republican, they have a free pass.
Yeah.
And so, and for someone like Manchin and Heitkamp, it seems to me that Roe v. Wade or abortion rights or even the ACA, not as compelling of an argument as the argument that, hey, Brett Kavanaugh, he's written some weird things about Donald Trump, about subpoenaing a president, and there's an investigation going on, and there's already record of people, of Donald Trump saying, like, will you give me a loyalty pledge? And these are, it seems to me, important themes that a guy like Manchin or Heitkamp can say, well, this is procedural. This is not about politics. This is simply about, like, procedure. Like, we should be a little bit hesitant here because this is about judicial temperament. These are all issues that are not, you don't get called a liberal for or whatever, a conservative for, right? And this also seems to me to be a line of questioning that Kavanaugh really can't escape answering. He could say, abortion is the law of the land. But, we all know that once you get onto that Supreme Court, the law of the land is only what you say it is. And so he can avoid answering those questions. He can't really avoid answering questions about stuff that he wrote, about subpoenas, about being a leaker on Ken Starr, these type of things. Like, does he have the judicial temperament? That type of thing seems to me to have more weight with, like, a Manchin. And then you have people who are simultaneously in Maine saying, Susan Collins, you want to go down in the history books as the woman who voted the final vote to put the nail in the coffin of a woman's right to choose. That to me seems like the order of things, at least in terms of to the extent that we can have any influence on this process.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I have actually had, if the Democrats really want to play hardball with this, and I think they must, which means you got to do all of these things. There's one final sort of Hail Mary pass that you can do, I think, in this, and that is to try and trap Brett Kavanaugh into saying something that Donald Trump will find so offensive about. It has to be about him, right? It has to be something about Trump because that's the only thing he cares about. So frightening or offensive that he will withdraw him. And the reason I say this is because Trump almost withdrew Gorsuch. But when he heard that Gorsuch had said that he didn't like the way Trump talked about the judiciary, and he said that to Richard Blumenthal in a private conversation, which Blumenthal related to the press, he was going to withdraw him. And Mitch had to come up to the White House and hold his hand and really beg him not to do it and say, no, it's okay, he's just saying that, whatever. Now, maybe Trump's learned something since then, but I doubt it. He doesn't learn anything. So I'm not even saying that that's specifically something, but I do think the idea that they can back Kavanaugh into a corner on recusal is a potent bit of leverage to drive a wedge between Kavanaugh and Trump. And because Trump, we know how he feels about recusals, right? I mean, Jeff Sessions is, he's got the scars to prove it. And there is a legitimate argument to be made about Kavanaugh, that Kavanaugh should be recused because of, the stuff that he's written about a president being subject to, investigations or impeachment or any kind of a special prosecutor or any of this stuff. I mean, there's stuff out there. Plus his former association with the Star Report and his, partisan affiliation. There's a lot of ways you can put that case together that he needs to recuse himself from this investigation into Trump. And that, in my view, is the reason why Trump picked Kavanaugh, is because he thinks that he is the partisan who will save him. So, that I'm not saying that this is something, should be the strategy, but I certainly hope that Democrats have this in their pocket as a way to try to drive a wedge between Trump and Kavanaugh and at least make, if nothing else works, maybe have some way of trying to get Trump to withdraw him, which he could do. He could easily do it and then just put somebody else in. It's not like there's going to be another president in the next 2 years. So, he'll get another bite at that apple.
Well,
but
the real question
it's like North Korea, right? Delay.
Well, and then the real question, of course, this scenario has to be, if we play out the scenario, what happens is the nomination does not get a vote until after the election. Hopefully the Democrats win the election. Then it becomes even more dubious that they would hold a vote on whether Kavanaugh should be the Supreme Court. I mean, there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts involved in this strategy. A lot of ifs, I guess. A lot of if comes, essentially. And so, it's either way you slice it, it looks pretty ugly and pretty desperate. But
don't you think it has to be ugly? I mean, this is it.
Of course,
this
of course.
is it, and they should pull out whatever stops they can. We're so close to an election. I mean, using the Mitch argument, we're close to an election. The people should speak. Well, we are. That's actually true. Right now, it is really close to election, closer than it was with the Scalia vacancy. And the Senate, may change hands. It's only, 2 votes there.
Yep.
And there's every reason for the Democrats to do everything in their power and then use that in the election as an issue. Come on, we've got to push this here.
Yep.
I think, and even if they lose, sometimes you got to go down fighting, and this is one they have to go down fighting.
Without a doubt. All right, well, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about some other judges that Donald Trump has decided to make essentially political appointees. And on top of that, we should also talk about the Abolish ICE movement, which is growing in this country. And we have legislation that was submitted this week on a week where we really did get a sadly and disgusting, clear-eyed vision of the fact that our government, that we have been, as a policy, kidnapping children and basically ransoming them back to their parents. We got to take a quick break. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio. Heather Parton will be joining me in just a moment.